Welcome to Alternate Endings.
Half audiobook.
Half podcast.
Full apocalypse.
This time, we discuss the short story from our last episode and walk through the real-world implications of this kind of apocalypse.
All right, and welcome to the next episode of Alternate Endings. This is Tyler.
This is Ivan.
Nico.
And Jesse.
And here we are talking about my self-written, by my own, on myself story.
Who wrote it?
Me.
Yeah.
So did you get it from one of those essay websites?
100%.
I'm going to put it into plagiarizer.com.
I changed one word.
Right.
Oh, okay.
The change.
It was a big change then.
It was a very big change. This next episode, to discuss the story I wrote. Well, just to start it off like others, do we have some initial thoughts about either how it starts or the overall thought of it?
Nico mentioned this right when I got here, before we started the show, that he liked that there was more dialogue in yours, and I think that this really had to be built on a lot of dialogue with what his father knew, what he thought he knew or was afraid that he was going to learn. There was a lot that had to go on, and I really liked that it was focused on the dialogue. So that's my initial thought. I thought it was a cool take on what someone would think during apocalypse that they're starting.
No, definitely. It was I kind of went back and forth at first as to whether or not, wasn't sure if I wanted it to be a recap of like going back in time and it was just someone else telling the story, or if he was just talking about his past like some of the other episodes. And then I knew at some point I wanted to write something that was either currently happening or was the beginning of something. And so I felt like this was the type of story that would lend well to currently happening, and to do that you kind of need at least some sort of dialogue. I don't feel like there's a ton of it. He's definitely a lot of his inner thought, but I felt like there was enough that it did kind of give a different feel to like a typical story.
One thing that I liked is when he was talking about going through the process of changing the code. So you actually were talking about the genetic code, like a person's...
Yeah, so
right.
The whole thing about it is I tried to make a comparison that the human body is like a computer.
Right.
And
we have the technology at this point where we can literally... I mean, we already do have that technology.
Oh, totally.
But you're saying it's seamless at this point in the future.
Yeah, that they do it so well. So like at the beginning he talks about how science kind of blew up and it had done so many good things. It
was almost like the new religion, like you said, science blessed us all.
Exactly. And that was their tie-in. That was something that's been kind of forbidden, and it still is. It's illegal a lot of places to work on humans and altering their code, the genetics of them.
So what genes are we mostly messing with in animals?
Yeah. I've messed with fly genes before. That I made a fly glow just by adding
crazy.
code.
Wait,
yeah,
really?
Oh yeah.
At UNC?
At UNC. And so you can submit them, you knock them out, and then you...
Can you do that to me?
If you want me to knock you out. Yeah.
Hypothetically, you could, or theoretically, it's possible now, right?
Entirely.
Yeah.
It's called CRISPR-Cas9.
Yeah,
it's like
I've heard
one
of
of the
CRISPR,
it's one of the big ones right now, and it basically it goes in, it finds a specific code you're looking for, and then it cuts it out and replaces it. And so that's exactly what we did.
Replace it with something.
And they're finding out more about it, and how sometimes it's not as selective as we thought, so it could lead to different things, which is part of, in my mind, what brought this is they were going off of a code that his father had initially helped create, was like the main creator of, but they still didn't even know, they had no success besides making a giant beast of a person.
Right.
And so they still don't really know.
I also was kind of that same thought that, like, your character, he really, like, because he works in this field, he really talked more scientifically about it, and, like, saying how the processes were different, and talking about the enzymes burning in like certain different ways, or however he said it, which is kind of cool. Rather than just like he was trying to put it in layman's term, but still trying to explain a process that would actually that's plausible. I assume.
Yeah,
we're talking in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I had to exaggerate. Like I don't see anything like that being able to physically change a person like that quick.
Right.
Like it would be more of something that maybe could be passed on to slowly make people bigger, but like it
wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be like Captain America.
Yeah, exactly.
You put him in the machine,
and that's what I was going for, is kind of realistic, unrealistic.
You took the truth and you stretched it.
Exactly.
A lot.
You know, that's just
who said that? Thoreau or someone?
Yeah,
I don't know. Fucking famous writer.
That's everywhere.
Thoreau.
Maybe they said it. Yeah.
I really liked how unsettled he was going into work that day, and like he's like, oh, everyone's getting it called off. Wait, except for me, and just like having to be thrown into it.
Happened so fast.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't sure what was going to happen. He thought it was for everyone. Even just think about it myself. Like if you go into somewhere, he'd been there 20 years doing the exact same thing, and if you're writing code for your whole life, even just like as a programmer, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're moving departments, and you're like, okay, cool, I think that's everyone. And then you go in and
you're the only one.
It's just you. Like, what is that?
In a department that he doesn't have any expertise in.
Yeah. Like, what does that mean? And on top of that, I tried to throw in the secrecy of it all. Like, what his mind is constantly racing, so he thinks, oh, I'm going to go help with nature or whatever the environmental ones are, because that's what she says. Mm-hmm. But it's all just a throw off for this secret program.
I'd volunteer.
I probably would too, if I'm honest.
Give me super... Because if I'm the one that it works out
that
on...
actually works, yeah.
Fucking next step in evolution, bro.
But your life's destroyed. You're so filled with testosterone that you just...
Well, I'm saying if I'm the first one that works.
Oh, okay.
And that's what... so they did want to change it. I mean, their goal was to have them still have self-control. And when I was talking about altering it, I wanted it to be that delay so that they do think they have the chance. Like when she goes up and Nova even says, I let them out because I thought it worked, to get that hope of, you are the first one. Like, we can make this happen.
You did it.
Yeah.
The son of... He's a prodigy.
Yeah, he is the son.
And I was kind of like... The announcements that were happening, was that just like a newscast or at the very beginning?
Yeah, so I just pictured it as basically a presidential address that normally happens. It was just really quick and...
I see.
And
so his dad he took over his dad's project.
Basically, yeah, without knowing
what was actually
happening at first. For the longest time, I couldn't determine if I wanted to make it happen sooner that he knows what's going on, or try and stretch it. If you want something to happen quickly, like what Nova and them are doing, you can go about it in so many different ways, and she went with a scare tactic. And so I feel like having it be surprised, the mixture of it's brand new, we're dropping this on you and it needs to happen now, would definitely motivate a lot of people to...
And I feel like that's how it is in the real world when they're working on experimental stuff. It's like they're expecting results fast.
Always want results, you know? Whether it's from the people putting in money that expect results, or there is an actual
emergency
world, yeah,
whatever.
Exactly, a problem that they want to fix. And so that's why I tried to throw in as many problems as I could, just to give the Bothan Party, which, going back to, really is a real word. It is
did not know that.
That's really what they called scientists back in World War II over in England. Yeah,
like trying to design weapons and things for the war.
I don't even think they were. That's just what they called like the general scientists, and I'm sure some of them were. I mean, it's a wartime
war stuff,
yeah, but I felt like that was something that could easily be attached to, and all of a sudden it could become a bigger phrase. They had grown so powerful, essentially, that they were untouched. They could do whatever they wanted. No research is off limits. I mean, can you imagine a world where scientists are literally allowed to do whatever they want because you can do it almost?
Yeah. I feel like it's both good and bad, because there's progress, but there's also impatience breeds trouble and possible danger. I mean, it's like you mentioned the CRISPR technology, so we have this gene editing ability to use it on humans, but we choose not to.
Yeah.
And who knows how many years and months we've had an ability to alter humans already, but we as a society think that there's something ethically wrong with that. But we'll do it on sheep and flies, and I think that line is really interesting. And how long will we go until people start trying to alter what types of kids they have, or alter adults and clone people and stuff like that?
And that's why I decided, because initially when I wrote it, I did write "God bless us all" for the address, and I was like, well, if that's still the what you're left with,
because it's a moral discussion at this point.
Exactly. And so I had to figure out a way to get across they're more focused on science than anything else. So there's no longer the moral dilemma of, is this God that you're playing? It's
we don't believe
whether
in
you
God.
believe it or not, it's we believe we have the technology to do it, so why
Aren't we?
Why aren't
I mean,
we?
I'm asking that question now, to be honest.
Yeah, but so there actually was. I read a little bit about an article in China. I think it was in China. There was a guy arrested for doing it.
Oh,
Really?
I mean, yeah, he was arrested for. He was a scientist, and he got arrested for starting to try and do human trials of editing.
so designer
genes.
babies, that's still talk. It's not actually happening.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can do things where you help with, you can prevent diseases by just going in, and so that's where a lot of the discussion is.
It's like if... Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say, some people expect if we allow it at all, it's going to go to an extreme.
Right.
And then there's people who are on the other end saying, well, no, if we had it, we could regulate it and just make it so we can...
It's like those people are going to say, well, we have this technology and we can use it for cancer and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also the other end of the spectrum. Is like, I want my kid to be able to run a mile and like you can do physical attributes and figure out how you want your kid to look and do. I was like, so for those people who are like, why can't I do that to my kid? If you guys can do this, what's stopping me?
And at that point, it just comes about money, and it would raise that whole class. And
but in your story, they're trying to make a super soldier.
Yeah,
for war.
Exactly. The goal is for war, for power, for dominance. Science had kind of taken a forefront for a long time, so there was peace, and everyone was just trying to progress. And
I like how you threw in, we all lived to around 200 years now. Just little one lines.
Yeah, because at that point it doesn't even...
Why not?
Yeah, they
Seems
don't.
possible.
Yeah, and they think nothing of it because that's the new...
norm.
Yeah, exactly. It's the new normal.
One thing I really enjoyed and that kind of just caught me throughout the whole story was just how it felt like the main character was kind of on this raft that was being hurled down a river, and there was no way to stop it. I mean, from the time he walked in that morning, or even his dad, I mean, we could go back to his father wouldn't tell him what his research and what his project was about, and ultimately that set his son up to do this, because if his son had more wherewithal and knowledge of what he was walking into day, yeah,
either stay away or even have time to think about it.
And then just how I just felt helpless watching him be pushed through every doorway, through everything. Oh, it's just gonna be a little introduction. Welcome, you're gonna save the world, and then, oh yeah, we'll get to work. Oh, but you have 6 hours to do it, and just being just in this, you're just being squeezed for proficiency and results, and he felt crammed, and then it ultimately led to a very bad decision.
I mean, it all comes down to almost a rumor. They just thought since, oh, your dad could do this, and did it, and had somewhat success. He was successful except for the fact that he couldn't figure out how to make them not so aggressive, and so they just shoved him into it thinking, oh, he did it, you can do it too. And the whole time it's a push along of, in his head, it's a battle of, can I actually do this? Should I actually do this? What's going to happen? And part of the reason I made it so fast is so he doesn't really have time to think. He can't. And I feel like that's why they would want that too. They don't want him to change and not do it or have that second guessing.
Earlier, you guys talked about walking into work on a weird day. It reminds me of when you start to figure out there's a surprise party, or when you walk in and you just kind of feel in the air there's an event today or something's going on. I just feel like there's an energy to a room that's kind of hard to even put into words, and I think that was swimming in that place when he walked in.
definitely. He even says how he can just feel whatever was in the room. It's now all on him.
Does it transfer to animals or just humans?
Actually, what do you think? Who knows?
Yeah, I go outside. There's a huge line with.
Because so I did want it when I initially wrote it. I had it be airborne. So I feel like at that point it could be transferred to anything and anyone. Just depends on if it actually affects them or not. But it just kind of seemed it was confusing. And so I felt like, especially for viral, yeah, it can be spread airborne, but for touch and for you have a body that's just gone through such changes, like I imagine almost a rebirth. So they're not going to be picture perfect looking at the start. They're going to have sweat or blood or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly.
Tears, like stretch marks out the ass.
Oh, yeah. So
literally, the ass will be stretched.
The glute.
Yeah, the glute is the biggest muscle. Think about how big it's going to get.
Ugh.
So if this can spread across animals, that means that you can be walking through the forest, trying to avoid all humans, and you hear this, oof, oof, and you turn around, and there's the most Arnold Schwarzenegger, huge, massive deer you can imagine, and it's just ready for your ass. How terrifying!
Everything is pissed.
Yeah. Everything's pissed, and it's jacked, it's muscular, and it just wants to beat you down for no other reason than it wants to.
They, at that point, all their trials beforehand, they had no control, and they either killed themselves or killed other people, and so were thus killed by the soldiers, the other people, whoever's around. But at this point, I wanted them to have a little bit more self-awareness, so when at the very, very end, they say, change, or however it would be, they know, that was my interpretation of, they know what they're doing. Mm. And for whatever reason instilled in them, it is now their goal.
It's part of their code, they don't know why.
Yeah, to make everyone else the same as them now. So, I mean, can you imagine getting word you're halfway around the world and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, all the Americans are 9 or 10 feet tall and they look pissed.
They're coming.
Like, you think that's a super army at that point? Those now you have everyone against you, and what?
Well, they'd all be tearing each other apart, right?
Very much so. I mean, you couldn't ever know. I mean, are they really aware enough to fully know what's going on to them, or is it almost zombie-like that all they want now is to make more of themselves and spread it?
So it's something that it's a virus, right? Yeah. That spread through touch, and since they're all like moist and open, it's almost like AIDS.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, kinda. Basically, it's it's immune system affecting.
So, that means that their genetic code has changed too.
At that point, yeah. It goes in. So how a virus works is it's its own little packaged alien-looking thing. It's got its like dodecahedron head.
Yeah.
And its little body, and it goes over. It injects all its information into the cell, and then it basically uses everything in the cell to make more of itself until the cell is completely full of it. Then it explodes and it just goes out and does more.
And it just keeps doing that.
Yeah. And so,
Christ.
I mean, if you think about that in a weaponized form also,
right?
Like, that can do some damage.
So in your story, what do you see, like, so this eventually would, I guess, take over the whole world? I mean, do you think that these people and creatures who grow massive and extreme testosterone, would they have a shorter lifespan? And in essence, if you could like get away to the North Pole or the Arctic tundra, survive long enough that all these creatures would die?
I didn't even think about it that part. Just could they reproduce? Could like what happens at that point? Or
God.
Is this
they reproduce all pissed off? Talk about angry sex, dude.
That is the most terrifying Pornhub genre you could think
10-footers pissed.
Like mountains just colliding with one another.
Hot slapping bodies. That's all I've got to say.
Well, it being a complete audio medium, I thought it was kind of fun to envision what these people actually looked like,
and that's
like how hawkish they were, and what like like what a traditional woman would look like Nova. What I had pictured in my mind, what she would look like, just
ginormous.
Have you ever seen League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
I haven't.
So.
You've seen it. You know the guy who's like, That's kind of what he kind of just looks like just a dude who's huge.
Just a big ass dude.
But with the same head.
Same size.
I mean, in my head, I kind of was thinking that extent, just at that point, there is no difference in body between men or women. You think there's a typical shape difference, but at that point, he walks into the lab and he has no idea who it is.
Until she turns around. Tetons! Oh! Or do they stretch out too?
They probably
all just peg.
Looks like pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just full pec, like 2 foot long pecs. I hate to be a cliche, but it reminds me of Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, where he has the quote. Oh my god, I'm seeing a photo of this.
Basically, exactly what I
from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and that's what I pictured too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You have to look it up. Do you know what the character's name is? League of
Dr.
Extraordinary.
Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, okay. So
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's kind of what we were thinking for what they look like.
But more bloody and stretched.
Yeah, but stretched and bloody to start. Picture birth. First birth.
Rebirth.
Of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Wow.
But as Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm says in Jurassic Park, just because your scientists didn't stop to think about whether or not they should, they just thought about whether they could. And that's kind of how this is. Like, super soldier, yes, we want a safe, security, international relations, whatever, but using technology to make super soldiers, and you want them to be aggressive but controllable. I mean, it's just...
And it was the first of its kind. As far as they know beforehand, it was purely used in a rehab way almost, just to make sure humans can survive. And it feels like this is the first time they're expanding into something that everyone isn't doing at the same time. This isn't something they're collaborating on with everyone. They're secretly doing it, but also it's for war. It's for their own benefit instead of the benefit of everyone else.
Right. Well, they're already kind of doing it right now. Some people get stem cell injections, and they get localized area stuff, steroids, basically to help them heal and get over injury.
What's that? Oxygen doping or something like that?
Yeah.
What sports guys do, right?
Yeah, they fill their blood. They get extra blood in them, and then they also have extra oxygen, so they can run longer.
Right.
And yep, that's
crazy.
exactly
Blood doping.
Yeah, blood doping. That's exactly what it is.
They put more blood in them with more oxygen, so that way it can be readily available for them when they're about to perform.
That's blowing my mind. This is making me feel a certain way. That's crazy. I didn't know they did that.
And it's
illegal.
All,
in some sports.
Yeah.
Is it all sports so you can't?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure any professional sport you're not allowed to. But I mean, you could see how it would have beneficial effects too.
Absolutely.
You have someone who's going to go hike Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest, and there's all right, before you go up, here's this extra blood. By the time you're done, it'll probably all be worn out, and you won't have it, but it'll help you climb to the top.
Right, you're going to use it.
This will help you survive. Yeah. Even
Good
things
idea.
to that extreme. Even steroids. Steroids are used. They're an
I do 'em.
anti-inflammatory. They're prescribed medicine also. I do them.
I want to be a fucking super soldier.
Hey, I'll make it.
I mean,
work on
steroids at a small level, they jack up your system, they pump you full of testosterone, and in some cases they make you more irritable and angry. So,
And
this is
shrink your ball sack.
Can you imagine shrinking ball sack and you're pissed off?
Yes.
Maybe that's why you're
9
mad.
feet tall.
That's why I want to take steroids, to shrink my ball sack. That's the only reason I want to take them.
Oh my god.
That's it. I don't care about getting jacked.
I just want to be normal.
I just know by the time I'm 60, it's going to be past my knees, man. I'm going to be the typical granddad sitting there with the shorts and the balls just hanging out. Like, Granddad, what the hell?
Fetch my paper, boy. Yeah. Well, any last thoughts for the change story here?
I think that this is entirely plausible. Just recently,
Put a big heart into my hand.
Scientists said in a South Florida institute said that they unlocked the entire great white genome, and that they
What's that?
are
I did actually see
seeing that they understand how they can live longer, cure themselves, or
Great
heal
white
their
sharks.
wounds, and that they live so long. So this isn't something that is really cool, that there's a possibility of this. There's something where we could be trying to test on people and finding out that we can change our genome to fuck shit up.
Oh yeah, I mean they do it everywhere. They notice certain things in one animal and they'll put it in another. All we did when we were changing the flies is we took glowworms code and put it over into bacteria, and then from there
you already have
change it over. Oh, like it's totally. And like you were saying, I actually just read the same article, and the cancer fighting things of that, the regenerative abilities. Like I can only imagine if they continued it.
I want to say that my last thought is anyone listening who's doing genome testing under the table, I'm in.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Sign me up right now. Volunteer.
I'm your first volunteer.
Well, you never know with as many secrets and how documents come out like 40 years after something happens.
Yeah.
Who knows if this year or 10
happened.
years ago we already tried something similar on people who volunteered. I mean, just like we talked about in a previous episode, we've experimented on military members who sign up for things voluntarily and they don't always know what they're getting into. So who knows if this has already happened.
Yeah.
And with that,
Death comes for us all.
thank you.
Thank you all for listening. Next episode, we return with a brand new audiobook story. Talk to you soon. Assuming the world is still standing by then.
We would like to thank Kevin MacLeod for his music found on Incompetech.com.